It is time for the latest episode of Gautrain, Why It Matters. I'm Godfrey Mutizwa. Now, I don't know how many of you remember that 3 days before the 2010 Soccer World Cup here in South Africa, the first in Africa, the continent's first high-speed train had also taken to the road, so to speak. It's 85 kilometers in length and connecting the Gauteng hubs of Johannesburg and Pretoria to Africa's busiest airport, that's OR Tambo. In a whirl of speed, it has truly revolutionized transport in South Africa's economic hub. So 10 years on, we are asking the question, what's been the impact? To help me answer some of those questions is the Gautrain Management Agency's Acting Chief Operating Officer, Tshepo Kgobe. Tshepo, thanks for the time. Time flies, doesn't it? I mean, we have all sort of forgotten the excitement that ran through a lot of us as that train rumbled off and took off on that very first trip. But it's time to look back and ask the question, has it been worth it from your perspective?
Definitely, Godfrey, and thank you for having me on your show. It has been quite an impact all around. I mean, if you look at it, it goes beyond just the general impact that everybody can see, which is all the buildings that have come up in and around the Gautrain stations, both at Rosebank and in Sandton. But it goes right down deeper to what skills have we developed and what is the level of impact at an individual and level of, in terms of skills, in terms of know-how that we've created. I mean, overall, if you look at it, we've created close to 1,000 jobs that are like part of the operations on a regular basis. And then we have the extended family of the Gautrain, which is the service providers that are part of that whole setup, which is in excess of close to 5,000 people that have a daily job. And the impact has been beyond that. Overall, in terms of our socio-economic development, we spend in excess of 3.5 billion rand. Just making sure that we develop skills, we develop know-how, and we have capability that enables us to run the trains properly.
Yeah, for ordinary people like me, of course, the biggest benefit has been the ability to whiz between Johannesburg city center, go to Pretoria, or go to the airport, all in a matter of minutes. We know these are journeys that used to take hours. In terms of facilitating the business environment and attracting people to say, here is a province where things actually work. Have you seen any tangible benefits by companies focusing on Gauteng? I want to say because of the Gautrain.
Yes, definitely. If you look at our current report or socio-economic report, which is the economic impact report that we've published in the last year, there is close to 44 billion rands of direct investment into the country because people look at the Gautrain and they go, I can do business here. You know, I always say to a lot of people, your transport system is almost like the face of any country. The way you interact with any country, the first thing that you interact with. And as you leave the airport, you engage with the Gautrain. And as you engage with the Gautrain, what you are able to say is like, I can actually do business here. And it changes the way a lot of people who I have met and I have spoken to in business and that want to work with us always refer to their first time when they arrive into the country to be able to say, I can actually work here. I can actually do business here because the infrastructure works. And you are able to, in 15 minutes, go from the airport to Sandton where all the hotels are. And it shows that there is world-class connectivity.
Yeah. You've actually partly answered a question that was coming up for you because it was around the issue of cost. We all know it blew up a little bit towards the end of it, and people have been complaining that, you know, this has been a big cost to the country, and the question has got to be, has it been worthwhile in terms of the revenue it is generated and the economic benefits it's brought? And you are suggesting that it has so. Could you categorically say that it's been able to cover its costs, not directly in terms of revenues for people paying on it, by the attraction, creation of jobs, creation of companies, as you were saying a few minutes ago?
Yes, definitely. If you look at, for instance, if you look at the occupancy levels in Rosebank before 2010, in terms of buildings that were there, almost Rosebank was a dead town, and we had lost a lot of the ability to be able to grow parts of the city. Sandton, by the time we actually opened that station, was only left with 5 years of life in it. And now you're talking in excess of 20 years where it will continue to grow to
Sure.
be able to service the areas in and around it. So in essence, we have actually contributed more than just what the train had cost.
You have revitalized, that's what you're saying, areas that essentially would have died a slow death. I mean, that's great to hear. But I also wanted to know, in terms of its targets, I mean, get these big projects. At the beginning, we are told it's going to create billions of rand in investment, it's going to create thousands of jobs, etc., and all those other things. Let's go back to the original targets and compare with what we have at the moment. How are you measuring its impact and how it's been able to achieve what you initially intended?
The Gautrain network has far exceeded its original expectation. In the concession agreement, we have what we call Schedule 22. Schedule 22 actually measures all the components of socio-economic development. And what you have in there, and the beauty with Schedule 22 was that it also has what we call forward-looking commitments. So forward-looking commitments, it's not about what you've done in the past, it's what you can also contribute throughout your operations. And that is the novelty of Schedule 22. And throughout, from the time when we did the construction, which we refer to as the development period, and through operations, we measure those targets. And those targets, in addition to that, carry one of the heaviest penalties in the concession agreement. And that allows us to be able to monitor the compliance to each of the targets. And when you look at each of the targets, I mean, they are clustered into sort of 5 or 6 parts, which is local content, ownership, procurement and subcontracting to local businesses, local employment, management, skills development, and BEE. And unlike in other contracts where you only measure BEE, here we've got forward-looking commitments. So every month we have reporting in on socio-economic development. And in most of the targets, we had actually either reached 100%, or as the concessionaire was avoiding any penalties, they had gone to 200 and even 400% in some of the targets.
Yeah, just explain a little bit about that concessionaire agreement. I think for many people who are not involved, we obviously don't know how that works. How does it actually work?
So we have to go back to technical issues here, and that's the legislation. So the Gautrain is a PPP, so which is a public-private partnership. And what the concession agreement does, it actually creates the contract between in the partnership itself. We agree that for a fee that will be paid to the concessionaire and them gathering revenue, we will pay them a certain amount of money to be able to operate the system in a particular way and with particular targets, and also carrying particular penalties and deductions if you do not follow the targets.
Aha. Let's talk about one of those targets, skills development. I must say, I'm one of the biggest fans of the Gautrain because it has absolutely made life a joy to go to the airport, as I was saying, to move between the two major cities. But let's speak a little bit about skills development because I have one particular skill I want to talk about, but you have got many other issues that you consider. I just want a sense of what you guys considered and what you are seeing.
So in terms of skills development as a whole, so you first is you now have high-speed train drivers in the country, and originally we had, so that's the first and foremost. Then there's also the systems that we've implemented. So for maintenance purposes, we had to have new people trained and be skilled up to be able to work on things such as electronic signaling, and also managing a high-end OCC like ours. In addition to that, we also had to be able to develop technicians that can work on such a sophisticated machinery. And we work with very few people. So in actual fact, most of our depot is electronically linked to the train. So when the trains arrive in the depot, they download their information and we are able to, with great precision, be able to go and fix what is wrong with the train rather than just generally inspecting the train. So that is a skill you didn't have in the country before. In addition to that, then we have the way we manage our stations and new customer service officials that you have in the stations that they work in a different manner. And our customer care is it's known all around the world that we actually make a big issue out of our customer care. And that would have been skills that we had to develop from scratch. And then there's the engineers and the know-how that was developed throughout the period of developing the system. I mean, I personally came from that crop of people. I mean, I was probably one of the 5 or 10 engineers that were originally hired during the development period. And through that, I came with knowledge of the railways, but I developed further my know-how on high-speed trains.
Absolutely. Fascinating. But do those skills now extend into the wider rail system? Like, for instance, the commuter passenger train service. We do know, of course, about the problems that bedevil that side of the railway system, because we know the trains are not always on time, the treatment of the customers is not always the best, and all those kind of things.
We are always in contact with PRASA, and as it is right now, the former CEO of the Bombela Operating Company is now the CEO of one of the PRASA entities. And she is there, and she's using a lot of the skills that came from working with us on Gautrain. But we work with each other, we work hand in hand with each other, and we make sure that we transfer skills to the other side on all fronts. I mean, right down to things like them putting a new ticketing system in place, security issues we are discussing at the current moment, and how to help them to be able to make sure that they can secure their assets. And then long-term wise, we are also talking about how do we make sure that they have the management and operational regime that ensures that that system could be the same as the Gautrain as it is.
Yeah, it's something definitely I can talk about personally. And, if I have anything to complain about, it's a little quibble. It's a little quibble. And it has to do with the buses that feed into the Gautrain stations. We are so used to the train leaving at 11 minutes past, no more, no less. But with the buses, it could be 2 minutes past, it could be 5 minutes past, and then sometimes you get the buses being driven like they are a commuter taxi. I mean, the speeds of some of them are just, but I'm talking about, individuals who are not doing as they are supposed to be doing. But I suppose it's part of the system of managing everything to ensure that the high standards that you have set at the beginning are adhered to. Is there continuous training in respect to your drivers?
Definitely, Godfrey. The buses have always been a source of pain to all of us, and we have always made sure that we can retrain the drivers. But there's a much more important part to this conversation we're having. If the issues, do not get reported, the customer is primary and to help us to be able to manage these things. We have a customer care line, and if those issues come up, they must get reported. And on the issues where they have been reported, we have had drivers that have either been disciplined and dismissed in certain cases, if it was a big gross violation. And also, we have also implemented tracking systems that ensure that we can see and pull up records where buses have been reported to be driving at great excessive speed. So all of that is part of our continuous improvement.
So we celebrate the Gautrain, but I know, of course, we're not stopping at the Gautrain. I mean, we had the MEC for Transport for Gauteng here on the program, and we spoke about that's part of what has been achieved and how we take it from here on to ensure that the benefits that we are seeing are extended to the rest of the province and indeed to the rest of the country. Let's speak a little bit about some of those plans, because now they seem to be sort of dying down, and with COVID, who knows? Maybe some plans may be altered permanently. Are we still on target to expand the Gautrain beyond the initial nodes that we have at the moment?
Godfrey, everything is about money. So it's what do they call it? So first and foremost, the project will get funded, and it's an important part of us going forward. And we are in an advanced stage of our route determination for the Soweto line, which is the line that comes up from Sandton, going through Randburg, Cosmo City, Little Falls, Roodepoort, and all the way to Jabulani in Soweto. And we are currently in the throes of the route determination, and we will be going to public participation soon, which is not the open public participation, but the plans will be published and gazetted by the MEC soon.
Sure.
And therefore, we will make sure that all that we have achieved on Gautrain 1 will be replicated on Gautrain 2 or on the Gauteng Rapid Rail Link integrated network that we're looking at. And then from then onward, then we also are looking at how do we incorporate the Lanseria city, because the Lanseria city itself is another part of the system that will create new jobs and create a new city. And then we will link up to 4 ways, Sunning Hill, all the way to Sambrand, and then also going to Mamelodi East. And then we will then, in the later phases, look at Boxback and linking to the Midfield terminal at the airport.
Yeah, these processes, of course, take time because of the various things that need to be done, like your environmental studies. Are those done, dusted?
Not done and dusted, but remember we've got the different phases. So we've done the pre-feasibility, we've done the feasibility, and then now as we go into detailed design, the next phase of what do they call it, of the actual economic impact. We've done economics, we've done environmental scoping,
Right.
and that environmental scoping shows us areas. And as we do route determination, part of that route determination is environmental scoping, and we are well aware of the areas to stay clear of. And the line has been moved around to make sure that it goes through non-sensitive areas. There isn't any clearly non-sensitive areas, but you have to make sure that you have mitigations in areas where you have a challenge.
Yeah. As you said at the beginning, money, of course, is a key ingredient in trying to make sure that this works. How are those negotiations going? Have they gotten more difficult because of COVID-19?
I think COVID-19 is actually more of an opportunity, and you know the way the economy has been decimated.
Yeah.
When you look at the Gautrain could actually stimulate a lot of job creation, and the building of that Soweto line will not only affect the economy of Gauteng, but it will also affect the economy of the whole country. Because it's such a big job. It will bring on and stimulate the construction sector. It will stimulate the consulting companies. It will stimulate the development of materials and the buying of new materials, and it will industrialize the province and help industrialize the province as a whole. So it's got a bigger impact. So in actual fact, when you look at COVID is actually has played, it actually creates an impetus that Gautrain must be built. Gautrain 2 must be built, because you will then be able to stimulate jobs and then jumpstart the economy again.
Yeah.
And it is those kind of infrastructure projects that will help to be able to get us out of where we are now.
That's what I was going to say, because it's actually, you know, for many people it's late because we've been talking about this for a long time. But also, for me, one of the key things that I have been watching over the years after the Gautrain took off is the demise of South African construction companies. I mean, champions such as Avenge, companies such as Marion Roberts, companies that used to be huge with the technical skills, suddenly are shells of themselves. How soon are we looking to start here and try to revive? And also, within the industry, do you guys keep tabs on where these skills are going, those that have been lost in the companies I'm talking about?
We are well aware of it, and the challenges are very clear, Godfrey. We can't push them aside. In terms of timeline, we all are now relying on the Treasury, the National Treasury. They have to issue our Treasury Approval 1 as part of the PPP process. And as they issue that, then that will instantly jumpstart the planning. And that will bring on probably a lot more of the consulting companies to come alive with a lot of work. Because the work itself that has to be done just for the Soweto line only can be done by one company. And there'll be consortium set up to be able to do that work. And therefore, that will do exactly that. And then probably between 2 to 3 years beyond that, then we will then be on the ground. And that would be for us to be able to deal with utilities, deal with issues of services that need to be moved. And then in earnest beyond that, after the 3.5 to 4 years, then you will have actual boots on the ground and us turning the whole of Gauteng into a construction site.
So we're talking quite a large number of potential jobs here that could be created as a result of this. Would you have some idea in terms of just the Soweto line itself, what we've been talking about?
So the Soweto line in itself, we're talking in excess of 15,000 jobs just on that part alone. And then as you look forward to the rest of the areas, you could be in excess of 35,000 jobs that will be created. And those are direct jobs. So that is like on the construction itself. Then you've got the multiplicity of what you get out in the market. So people who do reinforcing, so that will generate more jobs in that area. The concrete industry will be brought alive again. That will create more jobs. So in excess, you will probably be able to create 4 times that number of jobs that get created directly on the Gautrain will be out in the market and in industry as we reindustrialize.
Tshepo, I must say I am going to volunteer to come with you when you go to the Treasury and we go and sit there and we say to the Minister, until you put this project amongst those top priority projects, we are not moving away from here. We needed it yesterday. Now, before COVID-19 struck, one of the things that we were watching when you talked about the Gautrain was the increasing numbers of passengers on that line. Just give us a sense again of where we were and how it's been trending since the partial reopening of the economy.
So we were close to 57,000 trips a day. And we have, what do they call it? We have, for the first time last Friday, actually touched 8,000. So remember, we went down to lockdown level 5, which was no passengers at all. So we're starting from a zero base. And then we needed to actually build confidence. And when you build confidence, is making sure that people can come back and feel safe on the system. And we've done very well. Then there's the challenge of you being aware that a lot of companies are now working from home. So a lot of people that used to commute with us are working from home. But in itself, that has created a logic, Godfrey, where we actually have a market that has returned. So the 8,000 comprises of people who live in and around the station, that use the bus, that use the mini buses to be able to come back to the station. And as we build our new resilience model, we're going to build it in and around attracting more and more of those people, and then have the car market be the top up on that market, on the base market. But it actually has enabled us to think differently about how we market ourselves and who we market it to.
Yeah, it's an important conversation actually, because when you think about it, what COVID-19 has done as well is to say to people, you know, where we were saying, no, I'd rather, hop onto the Gautrain and go to Pretoria. Now you're thinking, if I do get onto the train, is there a potential that I could get infected? And therefore people are now perhaps rethinking their whole mode of movement in terms of public transport. How big a factor do you see that having on the Gautrain itself as a safe mode of transport for working people?
So first and foremost, Godfrey, every train at every terminal station, it gets wiped down or sanitized the entire train, and in both directions. So when it arrives at Hatfield, the train gets wiped down with disinfectant. When it gets parked, we do exactly the same thing. So relatively, and then we've got social distancing. So there isn't any two seats that are close to each other. And therefore we make sure that people are safe on the system itself. And we can still carry probably up to 50% at the current moment of what our load factor is. Right. So in essence, we are one of the safest systems that you could actually get on. And we are not pushing for the 100% as yet, and we don't see it being a necessary point for us to go there, because we have to keep the people safe. Then, as you're showing on one of the videos around there, we've implemented social distancing throughout all our stations. And then soon the cameras for temperature assessment will be installed on every station. We're probably looking at about 2 months from now, the screening camera, the infrared screening cameras will be on every station. And therefore we've put on all, we've pulled out all the stops to make sure that you are safe throughout the system. Both, on all our parts, the minibuses, the buses and the trains, you are safe. So it's one of the safest places you could actually travel.
I was actually going to say, if the taxes can be 100%, surely you can be 120%. There's no question about it. That's tongue-in-cheek. I don't want you to answer that. But I was going to say, actually, can't you, I don't know, I don't have the words to describe the systems that they use on the aeroplanes where they are allowing 100%. Can't you apply the same system onto your trains?
Not as yet. So the planes can't do that because they have certain types of filters on on their train, on
Right.
their vehicles. We have the right types of filters, but at this point in time, the legislation or the regulations are only allowing at 70%, and we would love to get to 100%, because as it is right now, the system is struggling, and we are paying a fair bit of money to make sure that we keep everybody whole. But in essence, what we need to be able to do is do a risk assessment of whether or not we can carry 100%. And it's only the risk assessment that will then enable you to be able to decide, is this the correct direction to go?
Absolutely, Tshepo. I can tell you everybody is learning, and I'm sure the government is also learning, and perhaps may have been considering the fact that some operations that were shut should not have been shut, and I dare say the Gautrain should have been one of those that was not shut. But let's leave it there for today. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Godfrey.
Tshepo Kgobe is the acting Chief Operating Officer of the Gautrain Management Agency. Thank you for joining us for this latest edition of Gautrain While It Matters. Until next time, goodbye.